We want to bring into our conversation Democratic Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona, a member of the Homeland Security Committee. Senator, I'm not sure if you were able to hear an eyewitness to the most recent shooting say they're killing our people. I think that's how a lot of people are metabolizing this moment, especially if they come from immigrant communities, from Latino communities. Your reaction to these back-to-back deaths at the hands of ICE?
Well, look, just from a personal perspective and talking to family members and hearing and listening and reading what they're saying in the WhatsApp channels, Latinos aren't looking at this as an immigrant versus illegal immigrant situation. They're looking at this as a Latino situation because neither of these men were targeted. The only reason they are dead is because they were Latino working class men and ICE was looking for somebody and they fit the description close enough. And that could be anybody. It could be my uncles, it could be my cousins, it could be all these people that wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning to go work at construction sites, to go work at the meat packing factories, to go work at the restaurants. And because ICE has a quota that's been imposed by Stephen Miller and Secretary of Homeland Security Mullins has no power, they're just going to continue doing this. And because there's no accountability, they're going to continue to do this thuggish behavior where these men, largely Latino men, are going to be killed and murdered in the streets because there's no accountability whatsoever. Number two, I heard one of your commentators talk about professionalism. Even in the hardest of times when I was in Iraq, and we had to do vehicle inspections, and we had to deal with some very difficult situations, we still had a certain level of professionalism that did not put us in a situation where we found ourselves shooting sideways into a vehicle. And all we're seeing right now is just an episode of a huge cover-up because they know that the American public is against that. They know now that the swing Latino vote is really unhappy that they're targeting working-class Latino men and using racial profiling under Kavanaugh's description of what is allowed to racial profile to target and kill these men. And that's why you have this reaction that's happening. And it is personal. Again, it's not illegal versus legal. This is the whole Latino community that is unhappy with the fact that they're randomly killing Latino men in the streets of the United States.
Senator, I want to tie the personal to the policy here because the whole reason Democrats pushed a hard line on that DHS shutdown earlier this year was to demand that new ICE funding be paired with real reforms. And in the end, they got the money, no strings attached. In your view, would those reforms have saved the lives of Johann Sebastian and Lorenzo Salgado Araujo?
I can't tell, but I do believe there at least be some level of accountability because we were asking for there to be body cameras on every ICE agent. It would have restricted where and when they could move and who and they could and when they could target them. And it certainly would have at least brought some sense of accountability to the force in general. The reason this is happening right now is because these ill-trained ICE officers and maybe potentially Border Patrol officers are feeling that they can get away with it. They know that they're not going to get charged. They hear that the president's going to pardon them at the end of the day and that they're going to be able to keep their cushy pension jobs. And so this is why they're acting the way there is, because they have no feeling that they're ever going to have to check in with anybody at the end of the day. If you actually had an administration that was really doing real investigations, was actually holding these men accountable, and it would actually hold them accountable both in terms of prison time as well as for their jobs and their pension, then maybe they would actually restrict themselves. But instead what they're doing, they're just trying to fulfill this random quota that the pencil neck in the White House wanted to fulfill, and that's what's causing these men to go as extreme as they are. And they're targeting now and racial profiling working class Latino men.
Senator, I asked earlier Congressman Garcia about this new Reuters reporting that supposedly ICE has suspended vehicle stops after these shootings. He said to me, I don't believe anything that comes out of DHS. Is it your understanding that ICE is in fact suspending this policy, and how do you hold them to account on what it is they say they plan to do?
Well, I don't believe it. I'm on the Committee on Homeland Security. We haven't had any information on that. And let's be clear, this isn't a police stop, that we see traditionally, right? We have very well-trained local police officers that know how to pull over suspects and know actually how to effectively do professional law enforcement. These guys are targeting men, Latino men, claiming that they're going after somebody. And because they're not, they have no markings, they're ramming some of these cars, and these men are reacting like anyone else would react if you get rammed. So this is not some kind of pullover that's happening. They're literally ambushing some of these men that end up dying and causing and putting them in a situation, putting themselves in a situation where they could claim that as ICE agents, they felt threatened for their life. That is not what you do as professional law enforcement. You certainly don't put yourself in a situation where you could potentially get run over, and you certainly don't shoot into the side of a car when the car is fleeing and no longer a threat to you.
Senator, I'd like you to help me understand something, which is, of course, there's a lot of discourse right now about abolishing ICE. There's some talk of reforming ICE. Why have we not heard Democrats come out more forcefully with the argument that truly this is an opportunity to talk about legalization and move this entire conversation in a different direction?
Well, I think because, first of all, we're just trying to stop the bleeding that's happening right now. We need to figure out how to pen in this administration and stop the random killing of Latino men in the streets of this country and just U.S. citizens like we saw happen in Minnesota. But we do see that this country has moved in a direction where they want comprehensive immigration reform. They want people to go through a process to stay in this country if they have done no major crimes, if they're willing to pay a fine, and that we want to make sure that we have at the same time secure borders. I think there's no denying that. The problem that you have right now is you have an extreme position on immigration led by Stephen Miller that doesn't just want to stop immigration to this country. He wants to punish the country for the fact that we have so many immigrants in this country. He wants to scare the Latino community. This is why they're racially profiling. This is why Latino men are being shot in the streets of this country, because they don't care who they pull over as long as it's close enough. And then if they get to shoot at them, you have an administration that's going to cover up for them.
Senator, I'm sure you have seen the protests that erupted in real time at Susan Collins' office. She was one of the Republican votes that gave DHS billions more to keep doing what they're doing on immigration. You had endorsed Graham Plattner. You have since rescinded that endorsement. His exit really complicated Democrats' chances of flipping that seat. I wonder, when you look at Maine, what is the lesson and how do Democrats regain that trust?
Well, the lesson in Maine is the fact that Susan Collins is entirely the problem of all this. You know, you can't just say that she voted for the money for ICE. She is the main appropriator for the Senate. She can actually put in the restrictions on ICE and what they can and can't do. And when we were going through our negotiations, trying to actually put some sane restrictions on it, the person that opposed any type of restriction on ICE was Susan Collins. And the only reason Susan Collins was doing that because she had to listen to the orders of Stephen Miller and Donald Trump. There are a lot of sane restrictions that a lot of our law enforcement professionals use every day to keep our communities safe, protect civil liberties, and at the same time to make sure we don't have the chaos on the street that's being caused by ICE right now. Susan Collins had the opportunity to do it, and like usual, she said she was worried about it, and she did nothing. Because at the end of the day, she is 100% vote for Donald Trump and for the chaos he is causing in our streets all over the country, and now unfortunately brought to a small town in Maine.
Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona. Senator, thank you so much for being with us.